This morning, the Supreme Court has delivered a monumental victory for the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the rule of law.
President Trump declaring victory today after multiple major Supreme Court rulings in his administration's favor, from reining in nationwide injunctions from lower courts to allowing parents to opt out of LGBTQ readings from a case out of Montgomery County. Thank you for joining us on this packed day on WUSA 9. I'm Simone D'Alba. It was just 6 hours ago when the High Court dropped their final rulings this term, and they were decisions with the biggest impact on the entire country. We have team coverage for you tonight. Let's begin with our Melissa Kim, where schools and parents in Montgomery County are reacting to today's ruling on LGBTQ books. Melissa?
Yeah, hi there, Simone. This was an ongoing battle for 2 years in the Montgomery County public school system, and ultimately, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the parents in a 6-3 decision. So that means they can opt out of any curriculum involving LGBTQ plus reading materials. This decision drawing passionate reaction from people on both sides.
It's just a true relief to recognize that in America, religious liberty and parental rights are still respected.
They want to silence our stories. They want to erase us from history.
Strong words after a 2-year debate in Montgomery County Public Schools. Adam Zimmerman is a parent of 2 in the school system. He calls the 6-3 decision in favor of parents being able to opt out of LGBTQ plus curriculum the wrong message.
Is and should be, do we expose children to intolerant messages masquerading as religious faith?
Rosalind Hansen has a son in the school district and was one of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit, citing her Catholicism.
This was never to change curriculum or to change the books being used, but simply to grant families the right to opt out of very sensitive materials that may be against their religious beliefs.
She defines the decision as making sure all voices are heard.
In this type of society where we have a religious diversity and we have a pluralistic society, that there is room for all when you institute things like opt-outs.
Montgomery County Council member Evan Glass thinks it does the opposite.
The fact that Johnny has 2 mommies and Stacy has 2 daddies. This ruling sends a chilling message.
President Trump weighing in on what this decision means.
They lost control of the schools. They lost control of their child. And this is a tremendous victory for parents.
So what's next? Rosalind says actually implementing the opt-out will be a collaborative effort.
We are looking forward to Montgomery County Public Schools coming to the table and figuring out how we no longer try and force kids into learning certain beliefs.
But for Adam, this decision sets a dangerous precedent for schools that might not have the same resources as Montgomery County.
At the end of the day, be forced to take the easier route of just taking those books out of the classroom or out of the library.
And Councilmember Glass noting that this decision is happening in June, which is Pride Month, and that it's about the LGBTQ community being acknowledged in schools. Simone?
All right, as you said, a 2-year-long battle making its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. Melissa Kim for us tonight. Thank you. And as we mentioned, the High Court ruled to curb nationwide injunctions that block the enforcement of President Donald Trump's birthright citizenship order. The ruling avoided addressing the constitutional merits of the order that aims to deny passports and other documents to babies born to non-U.S. citizens. Julia Benbrook details the decision from outside the court.
In a 6-3 ruling, the conservative majority backed President Donald Trump's efforts to curtail lower federal courts from issuing nationwide injunctions that have served as a roadblock to his agenda for months, but left the fate of his divisive executive order on birthright citizenship unclear. The High Court's decision was a significant win for Trump, and it could have lasting implications, not only for the remainder of his term, but also for future presidents of both parties. In the majority opinion, Justice Amy Coney Barrett wrote, quote, "When a court concludes the executive branch has acted unlawfully, the answer is not for the court to exceed its power to." In a dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor warned that under the ruling, no right is safe in the new legal regime the court creates. Writing, "Today, the threat is to birthright citizenship. Tomorrow, a different administration may try to seize firearms from law-abiding citizens or prevent people of certain faiths from gathering to worship." There were several other major rulings on Friday. The court also ruled that religious parents can opt their children out of the reading of LGBTQ books in school and upheld a Texas law that requires age verification for pornographic websites. And in the latest legal challenge to Obamacare to reach the high court, the court upheld a task force that recommends preventive health care services that insurers must cover at no cost. Every year, the Supreme Court tries to finish its work by July, but it is unusual to see so many highly watched cases on the final decision day. In Washington, I'm Julia Benbrook.
Continuing our team coverage, our Jordan Fisher joining us now to help break down some of these major Supreme Court decisions. Jordan, good to have you here.
Simone.
Let's go ahead and start with Montgomery County, because this was a big win for the Montgomery County parents who opposed the school board. I'm curious, was it a surprise that the court ended up siding with them in the end?
Yeah, Simone, I think they had telegraphed this in oral arguments earlier this year, and if you look at the Roberts Court in general, it's been a very friendly venue for plaintiffs trying to expand what they see as religious rights. There was an analysis a few years ago that this court, the Roberts Court, has ruled with religious litigants more than 80% of the time. If you think it was just 7 years ago, this month really, that they returned their masterpiece cake chop decision that found that a Colorado baker could refuse to make a wedding cake for an LGBT couple, and they have ruled consistently for years in favor of religious litigants, again, doing so today.
Well, and again, along ideological lines, as you've kind of outlined here, the decision was 6-3 with all of the court's liberals dissenting. What was their chief concern?
Right. I mean, what the liberals say and what you heard before is that this could be a slippery slope. I mean, where does this end if I have a religious objection to evolution, for example, if I have a religious objection to my child learning about any other religion in, say, a social studies class? Am I able to opt out? Does the school need to accommodate me? What does it require the school district to do to make that accommodation? And does that disrupt the administration of schools? Does that disrupt, teachers' freedoms to conduct their classes and their rights to teach students? These are all questions that are going to have to be answered now, and you can absolutely expect future cases to point to this decision when new litigants come forward and say that their religious rights are being violated.
And how to implement this moving forward is something we just heard Melissa Kim talking about. Let's talk about birthright citizenship, because look, President Trump has declared today's ruling in the birthright citizenship case a giant win for his agenda. What's the effect here on all of the other lawsuits against the administration? Kind of a waterfall effect, what would you say?
Well, the effect is that they're all going to have to go back to the lower court judges who initiated these national injunctions, and we're talking about more than 24 at minimum, and they're going to have to narrowly tailor them just to the plaintiffs involved in the cases. Now, in these birthright citizenship cases, of which there were actually 3, that means a small group of expectant mothers who are undocumented, who are worried that their children would be citizens of nowhere, essentially, as well as a group of states. Now, one thing that the Supreme Court didn't decide today that will be very closely watched in the future is whether a narrowly tailored injunction like this can be limited to states. That could be one route. The other thing we're going to see are what are called nationwide class action lawsuits, and in fact, we saw the Maryland litigants today file to seek class action certification.
Notable too, the justices not commenting on the constitutionality in regard to birthright citizenship. So that's something we're going to continue to follow as well. Jordan Fisher for us. Thank you for helping us break down some of this. It's a lot. Appreciate it.